Hello, everyone. My name is Michaela Mercer, and I am now presenting my research paper for my microbiology and my genomics class. My research topic is analysis of post-operative behavior and personality in an organ's recipients. Sorry. Okay, first I'm going to go over like the key concepts. So the basis of this research is to show how organ transplant process is like rigorous. It's not like a straightforward type of process, and also that I'm presenting this article that shows the statistical data of organ transplants in Cape Town. So first, I'm gonna start by with a little background, just in case you do not understand or you don't really know um, much information about organ transplants. So basically, an organ transplant is a surgical removal of a healthy organ from one person, and it's transplantation into another person whose organ has failed or and has been injured and it does not work anymore. The organ usually comes from someone who has died because we do not have a high number of organ donors. So when you do become an organ donor, unless it's not a kidney, you have to actually be dead, and they have to revive and get the organ out of the deceased body before the body actually starts to decay, and the organ would be no good. Kidney transplant is one of the most common type of transplant surgery. The least common single organ is intestines. So intestines would be the organ transplant be for like somebody who has intestinal cancer or some sort where they've been just actually injured where the intestine does not work. But the organ transplantation is also a major surgery that can carry potential risks and like drawbacks, such as like a chance as like organ rejection. Just because they actually take a healthy organ from one body to the next doesn't technically mean that the organ will work the same in the new body. So possibly that you go through the whole process of trying to get an organ transplant and the body will actually reject the organ. Thus, that's precisely why you and your loved ones will need to like gather as much information as possible, like on organ transplants, and like as soon as possible. So most organs that transplant includes kidney, pancreas, liver, heart, lung, and intestines. And sometimes a double transplant are done, like such as like kidney and pancreas and heart and lung, because they correlate each other a lot throughout the body. Kidney transplants are the most common, like I've said, and depending on the organs are matched usually using like several characteristics, including like blood type, size of the organ needed, because if you can't put a 40-year-old man's heart into a 5-year-old's body, because it doesn't match the size, and the chest cavity is not that big yet of the 5-year-old. Also, you have to take into account is how long someone has been on the waiting list. Sometimes people be on the waiting list for years and actually become sicker, and they have double failure of the actual of their organs, so that everything starts to fail. And you have to think about like the waiting list, how sick they are, and the difference between the donor and potential recipient. Just because you actually do have a organ is actually available doesn't necessarily mean that you would get it, because you have to actually transport the organ to you in a certain time period. Because we know that timing is critical in a transplant. Like below right here is a video, and it's preserved and transported for a body. Like this is how they transport the organ from body to body. I'm gonna play a little clips, like 20 seconds. Oh, it's not playing. Well, you can just see right here how the actual heart is actually incubated and how it still has the blood supply still going in to be sure that the heart is still viable. Doctors drop the heart sometimes in plastic bags and put them on ice, but lungs soon stop breathing, and hearts soon stop beating. Like the organs essentially shut down and they start to deteriorate. So that's why timing is so critical. Like this means that doctors only have like about 5 to 10 hours to get the lungs from one donor to the next recipient. So that means that you don't have enough funds at a hospital to send a heart from like Georgia to New York, you know? So what if you don't have that? You can't have any like actual road transportation because it would not make it. And where would they find people to do that? And it's just also like you have to be very, very careful, because if the time is too long, the organ just could go to waste because it won't work. So it's this new, it's an actual machine, or I can say a system that a company called Andover is trying to use, known as TransMedics. And it came up with a system known as the Organ Care System. Basically, it's a portable device that like circulates blood through the lungs and pumps oxygen through the lobes so the lungs can breathe outside the body. So that's kind of what you see in this picture, kind of. The device is, but it's not currently FDA approved, but it's undergoing clinical testing just to be sure like it's not pumping anything like any mutagens or just causing any defects in the actual organ. Right here. So that's an actual picture of the organ care system. So this right here is basically just an overview, and just you can just get a visual of how a person waiting for a transplant and the amount of transplant, how they correlate together, and just the difference. So if you can see right here in the red, this is the actual transplants that happen. It's like this is just overall just a random statistical fact that 25,000 is on the is actually getting the transplants. But almost triple that is actually people waiting. So you can tell that the process is critical and the process is long on people waiting on the transplant, because like I said before, you have to wait on the size of the heart and also the different types of blood types, because you just can't match it with anything, or the body will reject it, or it can even make you sicker. So the hypothesis of my research is, if a person receives a donated organ, then will they display behavior or personality traits parallel to the donor's history? So if I can like just rearrange that and just say it a different way, if a person were to get an organ, would they demonstrate similarities in behavior issues or behavior and personality traits from the actual person who gave them that organ? Because it's another person's organ inside your body, so your body has to adapt. So we want to know, I just want to know if like any behavior, personality things change in a person. Let's go down. So basically, organ donation is one of the most selfless acts somebody can commit, honestly, because you're actually giving a part of your body. You're there to try to help somebody, save somebody's life. So every day, an average of 75 people with recessive organ transplants. So of the 75, less than half organs donated are given to children aged 15 and below. So with that being said, you can notice that it's kind of harder for people to find organs for kids rather than adults. So the study was conducted in Cape Town, Africa, at the Red Cross Children's Hospital, and organ donation, especially in young kids, is a life-changing experience, because they're just in the beginning of part of their life, and they're already going through health issues that's possibly that 7-year-olds normally would go through. So, however, the researchers documented that speaking with the parents of the children who had received donated organs, said that their behavior and the behavior of the child changed due to like improved health, or like either decreasing because it's like they just have a different, they never felt normal, or they never felt been that healthy for them. So so surveys were provided with specific questions pertaining to the behavior actions of the child after the organ transplant. But the author, Sylvia Clare, recounts her experience with organ donation in her book called A Change of Heart and a Memoir. And then she talks about like the behavior and personality change she experienced after receiving her donated heart. So this is actually coming from a personal experience. Though she like found some new traits and odds, she never questioned the root until she met the family of her organ donor. So she actually went back and appreciated them as the organ donor. So after she spoke with the family, it became like kind of clear that her kind of quirky, kind of weird new traits, her behavior and personality character that formulated belong to her donor. Claire, like, she actually accredits her adoption of those specific traits solely to the fact that the traits, like, were inherently existed within the organ. But, there's no possible research because it's all psychological. So it's saying your actual behavior. So as a result, she received the organ. She too received the traits. After the researchers had explored this phenomenon, including Larry Delsey and Paul Parasol, these are two scientists that had published articles linking personality behavior adaptations for organ donation, even going as far to say that like the magnitude of behavior and personality traits one adapts is dependent on the organ one receives during donation. So like major organs such as like liver, heart, lungs will yield a higher behavior adaptation than like minor organs like a kidney or like an esophagus, because the esophagus is like rare. Although like both authors had made valid points, there's no really a real biological explanation for the similarities between the donor and like the recipient to prove the theory correctly. So that's why these are one of the sciences that I just previously talked about. Parasol's next study was titled, and he did this individually, organ transplants and cellular memories was in his writing. In it, he presents the theory of like cell memory and compares the cellular identities of like the donor organ cells to the recipient cells in order to prove the link between organ donor and the recipient behavior. It's not just a psychological, but also a biological process. So he tried to prove that it was some like biological sense to it. It's like a train, like we have to look into the genes or more like a genetic reason of why the donor recipient was acting like the donor. So all of his work of these authors and research were like necessary in the development of like the study due to like groundbreaking insight, because this is nothing that has been around a lot, and who would think to actually observe their behavior and personality, because we just want to rejoice and be happy that they actually have got the organ and they're now healthy, rather than just noticing that they act like the person where they got their heart from. So the study focused on finding a link between behavior and personality of children who had received organs donated by the adult donors. So due to the limited time resources, the study lacked biological data to support the analysis. However, nonetheless, the study was still a great foundation for like a deeper analysis. So just to bring it up and get to people to think, it was like really good to use. So in my main article, statistical data was provided and ran in RStudio by me to configure to show the correlation between gender, ages, and organs that was actually donated. So they conducted a small, simple donor survey, and it says, basically, please share with me how you and your child came to be at the hospital. So it says, do you have any information regarding your child's donor? Do you know them? Do you know where they're from? Is like a close family member? And it said, have you noticed any change in your child's behavior, personality after receiving the donor organ? And why do you think your child's behavior changes can be attributed to? And if you do have any information regarding your child's donor, do you think this behavior parallels to the history of the donor? And what organ was donated to your child? So with these questions, this is a way for the researchers to differentiate of why, when, and where, and how. So asking what organ can say like, well, the heart causes behavior issues, but the pancreas does not, or the kidney causes this, or the esophagus does not. So this is just a way to set organs aside. And also these questions that was used, I do like how they try to gain that foundation, but the only thing I did disagree with is if a child, because they're still growing and they don't have a full personality, or they will have behavior issues depending on their age, because they're your children. So I would say if a child does receive a transplant of an organ and their personality and behavior change, is it totally because of the donor? the donor's traits, or is it because they're not used to being healthy and they actually can do stuff that little kids do now, but now that they do have this transplant, just to throw that out there. So this is something small that I took from the actual study. I only used like 4 of the child's. So it just showed that info regarding donor notices change in child behavior. These were done by the parents, and the believed changes in behavior are related to the organ. So the first column is just showing that they do have information of the donor. I would hope so. Most people I know in the United States do, but I don't know how specifically how Cape Town organ transplant does, because you usually get information of this is so and so. The parents get the information of this is so and so's heart. This is what happened. Da da da. That's how it normally goes. So normal changes in the child's behavior, they all answer yes, and believe in changes in behavior are related to the organ. And they all answer yes. So like I said, I admire the researchers for administrating simple data for like simple observation by providing a simple tables just showing how the survey went, to providing the simple survey questions. But I do disagree with the study only because providing a small number of participants in the survey. They picked just a random cluster of participants to participate in the study, in those survey questions. So I think they should have gave it to all patients so you can actually look at the overall and get real, more accurate data. So basically, to further this study, I would add more variables throughout the whole experiment, just distinguishing like the behavior noticed after and before the transplant, like make them describe or make them receive a psychological assessment before and after, have somebody observe them before and after. So it can be more from a personal, authoritative and medical standpoint rather than just their parents. I also would like to do follow-ups on the participants and conduct research on like the mental state of the participant that were interviewed. So we all know that behavior and personality traits deals with psychological aspects. So for them to check their mental state after and before and just get them talking, you would know more about their actual state before and after. I would also like to ask the parents for them to participate in a health screening to gain more information on the medical history of their family, to see if they do have anything dealing with personality issues or personality changes, or do they have some type of early depression that their family normally goes to, where they're like more in their environment, or just something they genetic. So the basic research question was, does operative post, we talked about the hypothesis to know that if a person receives a donated organ, then they will display behavior and personality traits parallel to the history. So overall, the hypothesis was not proven. So the research question was, does post-operative behavior and personality of organ recipients patients parallel to the history of donors? So just to look at all that as a whole, you would say in order to like determine whether or not there's like an actual correlation between organ recipients and organ donor recipients, parents and organ recipients from the Red Cross Children's Hospital in Cape Town were interviewed about changes, so you would know whether or not they have any knowledge of history of the donor. So, or if it was accurate. We don't accurate information. We don't know if they actually provide the files, if they was a friend or anything. Okay. So just to close it up and show close up with the discussion, I would conclude that there is many similarities between organ donor and the organ recipient. However, further biological, we said, analysis of the actual cells before and after organ donation would necessary to determine whether or not the similarities are linked genetically or psychologically. One theory that seeks to like explain the genetic link is like the systematic memory theory. Like the interviews can be compared to like previous literatures and journals published regarding the topic specifically. like for further analysis of the systematic memory theory and actual DNA samples, you can possibly provide evidence like necessary to come to a conclusion. So that's the end of my presentation. I'd like to, for everybody, thank you for everybody watching. I hope that you enjoyed. And everybody have a wonderful Thanksgiving.